Evergreen Heart. By Oprian. Chapter 18. Just a stranger on the road. After the celebrations I decided to stay in Canterlot one more day, mainly so I had ample time to say my goodbyes to Sunny Spring, Rainy Day, and Shining Armor. We had become good friends over the months, and as I prepared to set out I made a promise to stay in touch. We were currently standing in the central courtyard. It was a beautiful spring day and to everyone's relief there wasn't a chocolate rain cloud to be found. But how will we finish our C&C campaign? We still have to retrieve the crown of Santar Ha from the Castle of Fear. Shining said as the four of us stood in the shade of one of the immaculately trimmed trees that lined the courtyard path. Well, assuming all our schedules allow for it, we could always set regular dates to continue the campaign. Say, once or twice a month. I opted. I suppose so. We'll work it out somehow, he said with renewed determination. We'll just have to find a suitable place to play. I don't think the dungeon is an option, no matter how oddly fitting that is. Yeah, no thanks. I've seen enough of that place to last me a lifetime. A moment of silence passed between us. Well, I guess this is goodbye for now. Fly free, little seed, fly free. Rainy said while pretending to cry in an overdramatic way. He even produced an oversized hanky. You are such a plot hole. I told him, but there was no accusation in my voice, only mirth as I gently slapped him on the withers. Just stay out of trouble. I know you will miss us, but getting arrested just to spend time with us is taking it too far. Sunny Spring laughed. I wasn't planning on it, but yet, and you three be careful too, you hear? We don't want a repeat of the custard incident. I thought we had agreed never to speak of that again. Rainy said with a shudder. I can still see it when I close my eyes. So much custard. Think happy thoughts, Rainy. Sunny said as she patted his shoulder. Well, it seems I've overstayed my welcome, so I'll be off. I said as I turned to go. Oh, and Shining. Hey, was his well-thought-out response. When you finally ask Cadance to marry you, make sure to tell Twilight in person, or no force on Equus will be able to save your sorry flank from her wrath. Wah, blue, I mean. Cadance and me, we aren't that close, we're just dating. Oh sure, keep telling yourself that, mate. If you repeat it in front of the mirror every day it might even become true. I said with a grin audible in my voice. Just get out of here, you. He said, trying to hide the pink in his cheeks. The others burst into laughter. With a final wave goodbye I started my way out of the palace. Just before I crossed the drawbridge that led into the city I was stopped by a familiar white unicorn. Prince Blueblood, come to make sure I remove my mossy butt from your palace. I greeted cheerfully. Quite the contrary, Sir Aaron. And technically it's Auntie's palace, he chuckled good-naturedly. I've come to invite you back at some point, namely next month, he said as he handed me 2 golden tickets. I studied said tickets for a moment. Congratulations! You are cordially invited to this year's Grand Galloping Gala. Hosted at Princess Celestia's palace in Canterlot. Formal attire only. Admit 1. I looked at him bewildered. I hope you're not offended when I say these sorts of gatherings aren't really my thing. Not at all. But that's exactly why I'm inviting you. So there will be at least one person I can hang out with during the evening without having to make polite but meaningless conversation or listen to ponies drivel on about political reforms and taxes. Plus your presence would really rub it in the faces of those among the nobility that wanted to see you rot in Tartarus. He gave me a conspiratorial smile. My respect for him just grew by leaps and bounds. Discussions of politics, the inevitable burden that comes with leadership. Very well then, it seems I have no choice but to accept, if only to save you from such a dreadful fate. But why 2 tickets? In case you wish to bring a date, of course. He said with a smile. I'm still not sure if he was just messing with me then or if he was serious. So now that that's settled, where are you off to? Ponyville. I have a promise to keep. Do you have bits for a train ticket? No, but that's okay, I was actually planning to walk there. Are you sure? It's not exactly far, but I'm sure. After spending several months in jail and then all the commotion of the last few days, I look forward to the peace and quiet of the countryside. Well then, I wish you a safe and above all, pleasant journey. Thank you, my friend, and also for everything you've done for me in the past. You didn't even know me and yet you went out of your way to help me and treated me as a person rather than a thing. If ever you need something, you have but to ask. I extended a fist and bumped his hoof. Make sure to show up at the gala and we'll call it even. Deal. With a final wave goodbye, I trotted across the bridge and into the city. As I walked, I transformed myself into the form of a regular earth pony so as not to draw any unwanted attention. During my time in jail, I had become quite good at my mimicry. The trick was not to use wood for the outside. I still used a wooden inner structure, almost like a skeleton, but instead of covering the outside with moss-covered bark, I now covered it in a thick, tough, rubbery layer of fungi. Like a giant mushroom. The result? I could now make a very convincing disguise in almost any color, complete with articulate face, thanks to the pliable nature of the fungi. It still takes some effort to get expressions just right, and up close you can still tell I'm not a real pony. But anyone over a couple of feet away will see just another earth pony going about his day. The only thing I still haven't been able to fix is the eyes, which are still a pair of glowing orbs. That's why I keep my mane extra long so it covers a large portion of my face to hide them. A problem I hope to rectify with a bit of magical research. I'm sure Twilight can help me with that. The mane itself is actually made of cactus spines, like those you see on Cephalocereus senilis, commonly known as the old man cactus. So yeah, anyone who currently looked at me saw nothing but a green earth pony with a shaggy grayish mane. What's that, you ask? My cutie mark? Well, I could only do something simple at the moment, so I used a stylized image of a red cap mushroom for now. If anyone asked about it, I could simply tell them my talent lay in herbology. Not a great stretch of the truth. In any case, I made it to the city gate without any incidents, and from there began the long walk along the winding road down the mountain. I made excellent time, and around noon I had left the winding mountain path behind and was following the main road out of Canterlot and into the province. The pale sandy color of the bricks looked almost yellow in the golden rays of the midday sun, and as I looked back over my shoulder towards Canterlot Palace, I couldn't help but be reminded of the Wizard of Oz. Though Canterlot was a far cry from the Emerald City, at least they had real wizards. I leisurely trotted down the road, soaking up as much sunlight as I could. To the left and right of me was nothing but open grassland and fields of crops. In the distance I could see the faint silhouette of a couple of farmsteads. Trees lined the road on one side, providing a bit of shade, and the song of birds reached my non-existent ears. In the distance a bell tolled, signaling lunchtime for the farmhands. Despite this being a well-traveled commerce route, there was hardly any traffic. A pair of stallions pulling a lumber cart passed me by at one point, but for the most part the roads were completely empty. It was so incredibly peaceful out here. Something buzzed past my face. I whipped my head around so fast I nearly decapitated myself as the wood that made up my neck snapped with an audible crack. There, hovering just to my left, was a dread creature bedecked in black and yellow stripes. Sanity promptly ejected itself from my mind. B. I screamed like a girl and set off into a mad dash. Fuck phew. I ran blindly, nearly tripping over my own legs in an effort to put as much distance between myself and my buzzing nemesis. I must have ran nearly half a mile before my brain finally re-engaged and I slowed down to a trot. Fucking bees. I'm still surprised by the speed I can reach as a quadruped. As a biped I would never be able to run that fast, even if I was in tip-top shape. Which honestly, I've never been, but enough about that. With my successful evasion of my nemesis, yes, let's call it that, with my successful evasion completed, I resumed my walk down the country roads and simply enjoyed the peace and quiet. Sadly, said peace and quiet was soon disturbed once again. It happened not long after I came upon the main crossroads. This was where the great equestrian commerce route out of Canterlot split into 3 directions. The 2 paved roads led east, the northernmost one to Philadelphia, the other to Horseshoe Bay and the great trade city of Baltimore. From there, trade ships sailed the Celestial Sea south towards Zeebrugge, and further east to the Griffin Empire or Far Napon and the unexplored Shard Islands. The other road led to the south, to Dodge Junction, Ponyville, and eventually the Badlands. This road was one of the more commonly seen dirt roads. I guess it makes sense since traffic in this direction is much lighter. Most of the trade goods bound for Dodge Junction and Ponyville are shipped via train. And the Badlands see little to no traffic at all, so why bother constructing a paved road if a dirt road will suffice? Plus, I think most ponies actually prefer the dirt roads. Probably easier on their hooves. As I followed the road south, the sounds of an argument soon became audible. Just up ahead was a cabbage farm, at least I think they were cabbages. Then again, it really doesn't matter. What matters was the 2 burly stallions throwing what looked like a mare off their property. And I mean literally throw. The both of them tossed her into the dirt like so much garbage with more than a little excessive force, if her pain squeak was any indication. "And stay out," one of them said to the mare who was trying to stand up. "We don't need your sort round these here parts," said the other as he threw what looked like an old duffel bag at the mare, knocking her back down into the dirt. Now, I'm not normally the type to get involved in other people's business, but when 2 lugs the size of an outhouse think it's okay to toss around a girl almost half their size, well, that shit just ain't gonna fly. "Gentle colts, that's no way to treat a lady," I said loudly as I approached. "This here ain't none of your business, feller, y'all just move on along now. I'm making it my business. Now you apologize to the lady or I'm going to do something very uncivil, you hear?" The big lug on the right didn't seem to back down, however the other got a good look at me and became hesitant. Plowshare," he mumbled to his friend, "let's just drop it, somethin's funny bout this guy." Plowshare didn't seem to be listening because he got right up in my face. Now, I made this form pretty tall. Just short of Big Macintosh in size. But this stallion was almost a head taller still. "I guess they grow big and dumb around here. What you wanna do at?" he drawled in my face whilst prodding me in the chest with a hoof. Oh, I knew exactly what I was going to do. My eyes lit up as my face suddenly split in half from ear to ear as I opened my mouth, revealing enough thorn-like teeth to give a Tyrannosaurus feelings of inadequacy. At the same time, I purposely began to salivate tree sap. But I changed its color to red, much like the sap of the Dracaena cinnabari, also known as the Socotra dragon tree or dragon blood tree. The result looked like a rather gruesome spectacle. To top it all off, I let a deep threatening growl escape from my throat. The kind a lion would make. Plowshare's pupils shrank to pinpricks, then his eyes crossed and he fainted right there on the spot. Felled like a tree at a beaver convention. His friend let out a shriek like a little girl and bolted. I curled what passed for my lips into a vicious, satisfied grin before turning my face back to normal. "You all right there, miss?" I asked as I walked over to the mare who was still sitting on the road with her mane draped over her face. She mumbled something under her breath. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that." Trixie said she didn't need any help, but Trixie is thankful all the same. It was then that I took my first good look at the mare in question. Brilliant azure coat? Check. Pale cornflower blue mane? Check. Star-shaped magic wand cutie mark? Also check. I briefly turned my eyes skywards, wondering if the universe was once again screwing with me. I mean, come on, what are the freaking odds? I swear if I ever get my hands on Lady Fate, that gal is in for one heck of a spanking. Still, no need to be rude to Trixie just because Fate is having another go at me. "Can you stand?" I asked as I helped Trixie to her hooves. Trixie is fine, no thanks to these ruffians. Trixie was just asking for a job. But it would seem Trixie's broken reputation preceded her. I couldn't help but feel a stab of sympathy for her. I know what it's like to be down on your luck. I wanted to say something, but she was staring at the unconscious form of Plowshare. What did you do to him? I guess she missed my little performance. Just gave him a scare. For such a big, tough-acting lunk, he's not actually all that brave. Trixie snorted. Best to be away before they blame this on Trixie too. Are you sure you will be all right? It takes more than a couple of hayseeds to bring down the great and powerful Trixie, she boasted, though her heart was clearly not in it. Well then, I wish you good luck, I said as I began to walk off. After a couple of yards it became apparent that Trixie was following me. Was there something else? I asked. Nothing, Trixie merely needs to travel in the same direction. Very well, I said as I resumed my course. I suspected that her needing to go my way had little to do with her actual destination and more to do with sticking near me in case those two decided to come after us to make trouble. Though after that little display I doubt they would be that stupid. We had been walking for about 20 minutes or so, and all the while I could see her studying me. She tried to be subtle about it at first, but as time went on she became more and more obvious. I decided to address the issue before things really started getting awkward. Something on your mind, Miss Trixie? Nothing, she squeaked. Then after another minute or so she finally worked up the nerve to just ask. Trixie was just wondering what sort of strange pony you are. Well, that's an easy question to answer. I'm not really a pony. Then what are you? She asked warily. That's a rather personal question, don't you think? But I will make you a deal. You ask a question, then I ask a question, a little tit for tat. Sound fair to you? Trixie accepts, she said after mulling it over for a minute. Well then, to answer your first question, I used to be a man, before well, let's call it a magical mishap transformed me into, well, I don't know what to call myself really. There are many fictional creatures that I have traits in common with, but none that really fit. Dryads, Sylvan, Orkwart, Ents, Tendriculos, Elementals, Treants, Kadama, the list goes on. But as for who I am, you can just call me Aaron. What is a man? Tut tut, you had your question, now it's my turn. That was the agreement. She puffed up her cheeks a little in that adorable way that ponies do, but she acquiesced. So you said your name was Trixie. Of course I knew that, but she didn't know that I knew her full name. Trixie Lulamoon, the great and powerful, she said, tossing her mane and walking a bit taller. And that counted as your question? Cheeky, fair enough, ask away. What's a man? Male of the species human, or Homo sapiens if you want to get technical. A bipedal being that somewhat resembles a hairless ape. Trixie has never heard of such a creature. I'm not surprised. We aren't native to this world. What? My turn first. Are you in any way related to Lord Grimoire Lulamoon? Her ears drooped and her eyes darted away. Touchy subject. He is Trixie's grandfather, she sighed sadly. Not a very good relation then. No, he disapproves of Trixie's career choice. He would sooner see Trixie waste away in some stuffy tower, researching magic and poring over dusty old tomes. That is not the life Trixie desires. And how do your parents feel about it? They are no longer alive. Trixie was raised by her grandfather instead. I'm sorry for your loss. Do you think they would have approved? Trixie has no idea, she never got the chance to ask. They passed when Trixie was but a tiny foal. I'm sure they would have loved your act. Trixie likes to think so, it's why she works so hard on her performances. Trixie is a true show mare. She lives for the chance to amaze ponies and bask in the applause of her audience. Her face fell even further, except that doesn't happen anymore. What happened? I asked. I knew of course, but I had to let her tell it in her own way. It took her a while to tell everything, and even though I knew the story, I listened patiently. She embellished a bit here and left out a few embarrassing details there, but overall it was pretty clear. And that's when Trixie ran out of town. Why did you run? You said it yourself, it was those two fool kids that brought the Ursa to town, not you. You did your best to try and fend it off. You may have failed, but you tried. Trixie could see the way the wind was blowing. The townsfolk would have turned on Trixie and would have thrown her out. Trixie decided to leave before they could turn on her. Well, to be fair, you did treat some of them a bit harshly during your performance. It is the way one has to deal with hecklers. There will always be hecklers. She gave an irritable snort. Hecklers. Trixie sees her fair share of them during her shows. Always naysaying. Calling Trixie out. Booing her acts. Best to show them up right from the start. I think you may have taken that approach a bit too far. It is hard enough putting up a show for ponies without their presence. Best to deal with them immediately and forcefully. That way they will be too embarrassed to heckle Trixie further. But don't you see, you are so focused on them, your show has suffered for it. Do you have any idea how hard it is to impress ponies with magic tricks? A third of the population is magical. Some are even better than Trixie. But this is Trixie's life, her destiny. It's everything Trixie ever wanted. She broke down into sniffles. Trixie just wants to perform and make ponies happy, so they will shower her with applause. But no pony appreciates her tricks. I'm sure some of them do, Trixie. Is there any way to improve your show? Maybe pull of more impressive tricks. She shook her head and pointed at her flank. You see Trixie's cutie mark? Trixie is good at performing lots of small cantrips, but not so good with the big spells. About the biggest spell Trixie can perform is her pyrotechnic spell. All her other spells are only good for small tricks. So your cutie mark gives you a very diverse array of spells, but because of that it sacrifices power for variety. She nodded in confirmation. Interesting. It seems that ponies have a predisposition towards one type of magic or another depending on their cutie mark. But most magic-related cutie marks are rather vague. Twilight has a bunch of stars for one. Trixie has a wand and some magic swirly line. Sunset has that yin-yang sun of hers. And of course, Starlight fucking Glimmer has a little star and swirly lines. None of those marks are very clear or easy to interpret. It also seems stars and swirly lines are recurring themes with magical cutie marks. But I'm getting off track. Then perhaps the solution doesn't depend so much on which spells you use but rather on how you use them. An idea began forming in my mind, or, who you use them for. Have you considered performing for fillies and colts instead of adults? What? Think about it. Most adults are all a bit jaded. They've seen a lot of magic already. At work perhaps, or somewhere else. They may know someone who can do impressive spells, so naturally it's hard to impress all of them. But foals are still young, have not seen as much, so they are much more open to your act. And if you can show them lots of small tricks first, then finish with a big one at the end, I'm positive your act will be a great success. If you mix in a little bit of comedy as well, you are sure to keep their attention. Kids love to laugh after all. And Maaib not boast so much. Trixie seemed to be giving the idea some serious thought. If you can create a brand new show, and tailor it towards a younger audience, I'm certain you will know success again. Sure, it might not be as glamorous as performing for an adult audience, but their adoration will be just as sincere, if not more so. And I doubt any of those foals are going to be heckling you. Your idea certainly has merit. But Trixie can't. Why not? If you are afraid to fail. Trixie fears no failure, it's just. Trixie doesn't have anything to work with. Trixie lost her wagon and all her stuff. Why do you think she was looking for work on that cabbage farm? Trixie doesn't have a bit to her name. Well then we just need to find a way to get you a new wagon and some props for your act. Trixie has tried, but no pony will hire her. What happened to your old wagon anyway? Trixie doesn't know. It could still be in Ponyville, or what's left of it after the Ursas smashed it anyway. Who knows what those ponies did with it? All of Trixie's belongings were in there, she sighed. Well then let's go to Ponyville and see what we can find out. Trixie can't possibly go back there, she said, half panicked. Trixie was humiliated. Humiliated by Twilight Sparkle. Trixie, stop, you can't blame this on Twilight. I happen to know Twilight and she would not do that to you. Certainly not on purpose, if she did then it was unintentional. Whatever animosity you feel towards her, you need to let it go. If you ask her for her help, I'm sure she would be more than willing to give it. She looked like she wanted to protest at first, and then seemed to sulk for a moment, before she realized something. Wait, you know Twilight Sparkle? We met, twice. 3 times if you count the time she tried to study me. She looked at me questioningly. It's a long and complicated story that I really don't want to get into right now. Look, let's just go to Ponyville. Trust me, with me there, no pony is going to pay attention to you while you sort things out. At least I hoped not. She still looked uncertain. She was biting her bottom lip in an adorable way as she went over the idea of going back to Ponyville. At long last she sagged a bit and nodded. Trixie will go. Trixie would like to get some of her belongings back if they are still around. That's the spirit. I smiled. We started walking again. After a few minutes of silence, Trixie spoke up. It's Trixie's turn to ask a question. What exactly happened with you in Ponyville that makes you so sure they will pay no attention to Trixie? I really don't want to talk about that. Besides, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try Trixie. She kept pestering me for another half hour before I finally relented. So I told her the whole story. Everything from the moment I landed in the Everfree Forest right up to meeting her on the road. It had taken me most of the afternoon to tell the story. Only leaving out the part about Equestria being a fictional world and all that mind-shattering stuff. Trixie didn't admit it, but I could tell she was a bit flabbergasted as well as unsettled by my tale. I'm just glad I hadn't scared her off. I was actually starting to enjoy her company. Below that brash showmare exterior was a pretty pleasant pony to get to know. Also a touch insecure. That was why she referred to herself constantly in the third person. Both as part of her stage act and as a defense mechanism. Speaking of herself in the third person helped her to lessen the impact of all the negative attention. I'm not sure if that's healthy, but I'm no shrink, so I simply choose not to judge. Ponyville was less than a day's ride away by train, but a good 2 to 3 days on hoof depending on how much one walked, because the road went the long way round through farm country and past rambling Rock Ridge, then skirted the outskirts of the Everfree until it reached Ponyville. It was nightfall when we came to a fork in the road. The left path led to the ridge and from there to Dodge Junction all the way in the south. The right fork led to Ponyville. We had made very good time though, and we were about halfway there. With luck we would reach Ponyville tomorrow evening. The first trees of the Everfree were already visible in the distance. Their dark peaks silhouetted against the sunset's purple and red sky. We should find a place for you to sleep, I said. What about you? I don't really need to sleep, unless I run out of energy. But after such a nice sunny day I can easily stay awake during the night, I said as we trotted along. If Trixie remembers correctly, there should be a little inn further down the road. How would you pay for it though? You said you had no bits. Neither did I, but I had originally planned to just plant myself down if I needed to recover, or simply keep walking during the night if I didn't. Trixie doesn't, but, she stopped and opened the duffel bag she'd been carrying, pulling out what turned out to be the clasp of her magic cloak. Her cloak and hat were in that bag. Trixie still has this. It's real silver and the aquamarine set into it should be worth enough to pay for a small room. She looked at the silver clasp with a sad little smile. You can't do that. It's part of your outfit. What choice does Trixie have? It's all she owns. I pondered the question for some time, until an idea hit me. Perhaps I can help pay for the room. Provided the innkeeper agrees. Let's go and find out, shall we? It was perhaps 10 minutes later when we came upon the inn. A medium-sized, two-story building that looked like a hunting lodge more than anything. A small sign hung over the door, presumably announcing the name of the place, though I had no idea what it said. I still haven't been able to figure out the pony written language. The warm orange-yellow glow of oil lamps lit up the windows. There was a small garden on one side of the building, presumably for growing their own produce, which was perfect for what I had in mind. Our knock on the door was answered by a sunflower yellow mare with a two-tone mane of teal and lime green. A small purple Pegasus filly was shyly peeking out from behind her. She looked a little younger than the Crusaders. "Oh hello," the mare said with a pleasant little smile, "are you seeking a room for the night?" "That we are, however we do not have any bits, but if you will hear me out I may have a way to pay for our stay. May we come in to discuss it?" "All right," she said after a moment, "but you better be on the level with me." I nodded and followed the mare inside. Trixie was right behind me. "Oh, but where are my manners? I'm Peachy Plum, the proprietor of this establishment. Over there is my husband Swiftwind." She pointed to a light blue Pegasus who was cleaning tables with a rag. "I'm Aaron, and this is Trixie." "The great and powerful Trixie," she said with gusto. I gently nudged her in the barrel with a smirk. "Now Trixie, remember what we discussed this afternoon." She actually blushed self-consciously and looked away. "And who is this little beauty?" I said as I gave the filly who was still peeking out from behind Peachy a little smile. "This is our daughter, Melody Star. Say hi Melody." "Hi. Dia, she's adorable," said Trixie, making the filly blush. "Melody, hey, you must be a good singer then," I said. Maybe she mumbled noncommittally. "Haha, don't let her shyness fool you. When my little one's in the mood she can really belt them out," Swiftwind said as he passed us on his way to the kitchen. "Day-odd," she squeaked in embarrassment, eliciting a good-natured chuckle from all of us. The inside of the inn was nice and cozy. Warm wooden furniture of polished oak and ash wood. On the far side of the room was a stone hearth where a warm fire crackled merrily. Two comfortable-looking couches sat on either side of the hearth. A few other patrons were reading by the fire or enjoying dinner at one of the little tables. On the opposite end was a bar of polished rosewood, behind it was the door to the kitchens. And in the middle, opposite the entrance was a staircase that led to the rooms on the second floor. "Now then, you said you had a proposition of some sort in order to pay for a room for the night," Plum said. "Indeed I do, but perhaps I should demonstrate. Do you have any plant seeds from your garden? Or possibly a tomato?" She tilted her head as she looked at me, one of her ears drooping as she gave me an inquisitive look. "I may have a tomato or two left in the kitchen, but what could you possibly need it for? Please, bring it here and I will explain everything." She nodded and returned a moment later with a little cherry tomato, putting it on the nearest table. "When we arrived I couldn't help but notice your garden out front. I take it you grow a lot of your own produce in order to cut down on cost and delivery of goods?" I asked. She gave me a nod. "I do try to grow most of it myself since Swifty can only carry so much with him when he flies to the nearest towns, and it takes him half a day to fly there and back. But what does that have to do with anything?" I gave her a smile. "I have a unique gift that might be of use to you, watch." I stared at the cherry tomato and gave my magic a nudge. Immediately my vision altered and I could see the spark of its life force. It was dwindling fast now that it was off the vine. But its seeds were a different story. I let my magic flow into them and they began to grow. Within a few seconds the little tomato burst and strong vines began to emerge. At the 30-second mark there were 3 full seedlings. 60 seconds and we had full-fledged tomato plants sitting on the table. Still I kept pouring on the magic. With a slight pop, a dozen tomatoes sprang forth on each plant. Big, red, and juicy. "There you go, fresh tomatoes," I said as I stopped the flow of magic and looked up from my work. Only to find every pony staring with slack-jawed expressions. "But that's impossible!" Trixie exclaimed. "No pony could perform such magic." I simply shrugged. "It's a unique talent," I said before turning my attention back to Peachy Plum, who was staring at the tomatoes with a stupefied expression. "If you will allow us to stay the night, then in the morning I will do the same for your whole garden. I can even do it multiple times so you can stock up a nice supply. But you will need to refertilize the soil after a couple of times. Will that be sufficient as pay?" She finally snapped out of it. "Oh, why yes, I suppose that will suffice." "Yes. Excellent," I said with a smile. Trixie's stomach chose that moment to butt in on the conversation, letting out a loud rumble that caused her to blush anew. Trixie was wondering if perhaps she could get a meal. She coughed. Peachy chuckled. "Well, I suppose I can throw in a meal since your friend's help will more than make up for it. Come, sit, I have some delightful vegetable stew." Trixie sat down at the table while I helped Peachy get the tomatoes to the kitchen. I politely declined her offer of stew since I couldn't eat it anyway. Still, I enjoyed myself. I was in good company. Swift and Peachy were really nice ponies, and little Melody was just plain adorable. As the evening progressed, she even worked up the courage to sing a little song in front of everyone. For such a young girl, she had quite the voice on her. My guess is some pony will earn herself a musical cutie mark in a few years. As the evening progressed, Swiftwind brought out some cider for all the guests. Again I had to decline politely. After what happened the last time I drank cider, I wasn't planning to have any anytime soon. I would stick with water for now. Still, I joined in with the drinking songs and having a good time overall. Apparently ponies have lumberjacks too. I don't know why that surprised me, considering I saw that cart on the road earlier today, but there were these two big stallions staying at the inn, an earth pony and a unicorn named Chopper and Chip. And boy, could they sing! I must admit I was surprised to see a unicorn working as a lumberjack. Most don't seem the type for the more mundane jobs. But apparently he can work a bandsaw like no pony else. He even knew how to play music on the thing. Those two were a lot of fun. They even dragged Trixie into the signing, reluctant as she was at first. I even got to teach the three of them Charlie Mops. Now that was a lot of fun. I don't know too many drinking songs, but that one I like. The hour grew late and every pony was having such a good and carefree time that we nearly all jumped when there was a sudden frantic banging on the door. "Help! Let me in! For Celestia's sake, let me in!" came a hysterical voice through the door. Swiftwind reached the door first. The second he undid the deadbolt, it flung open and a stallion came tumbling through. He was a guard pony, and he was in a bad way. His helmet was gone, and his petrol armor was scratched and dented. He was bleeding from a cut across the barrel where the armor had been torn away, and his coat was singed in several places. He looked like he had been through hell. "Close the door," he shrieked. The door was promptly closed and bolted up while we carried the injured stallion to the couch. "He's wounded," said Swiftwind. "Does any pony know any healing spells?" he asked the few unicorns present. But all of them shook their heads. "Trixie knows some basic first aid spells, but Trixie doesn't know how much good they will be," she said uncertainly. "It's better than doing nothing," I said as I bent down to speak with the wounded stallion, whilst simultaneously beginning to remove the banged-up armor so she could get to the wounds. "What happened to you? Who are you?" He tried to talk but went into a fit of dry coughs, prompting Peachy to rush into her kitchen to get him some water. After taking a large swallow from the glass, she returned with he finally found his voice. "My name is Quickshot, we were on a routine patrol. Myself, our captain and 3 others. It's our job to keep the roads safe, especially during the next few weeks." "Why?" What's so special about the next couple of weeks? I asked. It's star spider season, said Peachy from behind me. What harm could a few tiny spiders be? I asked nonplussed. Tiny? Have you ever seen a star spider? Sure, when they just hatch they are the size of an apple, but when they grow up they can become the size of a cow. Quickshot grunted. Okay, that part is new, that never happened in the show. But then that whole star spider bit seemed pointless in the first place. Not so much now. Quickshot hissed in pain as Trixie began to cast first aid on his wounded barrel. Normally we see one or two who wander out of the Everfree during the season. This time we were ambushed by at least 30 of the things. I've never seen so many. After the monster exodus last year the spider colonies have gone hungry, and now they are looking for food outside the Everfree. They took the captain and the rest of my patrol. I only managed to get away because the captain used an explosion spell. It blew me clear of the horde. Oh sweet Celestia, what am I gonna do? Swiftwind stood up with a determined look on his face. We need to get a message to the nearest garrison. I will grab my saddlebags and a skittering sound followed by a bang against the door cut off whatever he was gonna say. Oh no 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 no, oh merciful son, they followed me, the guard shrieked as the sound of more and more skittering legs closed in from all sides of the building. Everyone was now on edge, heads and ears turning every which way, trying to follow the skittering sounds outside. Chopper produced a logging axe from somewhere, biting the handle so hard I was afraid he would crack his teeth. Those few unicorns in the room lit up their horns in preparation to cast whatever spells they could. Another bang rattled the door, and then another. Mommy, I'm scared. Melody whimpered. Peachy Plum scooped her little filly up in her forelegs. SHH, it's gonna be alright sweetie, nothing to be afraid of. Will that door hold? Trixie whispered nervously to Swiftwind. It's solid oak. Even a minotaur would have a hard time tearing it down, said Swiftwind. A sudden feeling of dread made its way down my proverbial spine. This whole situation reeked of monster movie clichés. What about the windows? That's when the first chitinous leg burst through the glass next to the stairwell.